Welcome to Business Unfiltered, where we dive into the raw and unfiltered world of running a business with Mercer and Jeff Sauer. Grab a seat for this unfiltered journey into the world of entrepreneurship. This is Business Unfiltered.
Welcome, it is Mercer and Jeff, and today we're going to talk about how to get more referrals for your business. This is kind of one of those channels that I think sometimes maybe people take advantage of. Sometimes they just forget that they are not taking advantage of it. And maybe that's probably the biggest miss. I think for us, it probably was about getting referrals as a marketing channel because you're so busy focusing on trying to get those Facebook ads to convert that you forget that your customers they actually know customers that you could use. So we're going to talk about how to get more referrals for our business. Jeff, I'm going to rely on you a little bit here because I'm going to guess you have better systems for this than we do, to be completely honest. We have like the affiliate platform, because we have done for you work for the agency. We've got the done with you, which is the higher level sort of client coaching stuff. And we've got the DIY, which is like the video courses and everything else. So the video courses, we use like the standard affiliates or like, hey, if you want to be an affiliate for us, blah, 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 here you go. And that's how we get that for that. For the done for you, we sort of just rely on being really good at the result so that people naturally talk about it. But what I do not have, sad to admit, but is true, is I do not have something that causes either one of those two things to happen. In other words, we're just so good. Somebody goes, oh yeah, you should go talk to, but they're doing that on their own. I'm not saying, hey, do you happen to know of anybody? Or I don't have a system in place that does that. How are you guys geared on that?
Yeah, so I think referrals are an interesting thing. I don't have a system either.
See, that shocks me. I thought for sure you're going to be like, oh, we have this process where they go through and they, after 90 days, we ask the client, who else do you know?
Yeah, no, I think, well, we have things like that, but a lot of it happens a lot more organically than that. And we don't try to make it anything more than just an organic thing that happens. But I want to actually, I want to define what I think of a referral and why I think it's such a tricky thing and why it's such a weird, lumpy part of a business, especially a service business. But even course businesses, like in our course businesses, we get referrals all the time. Like people always come to me and they say, hey, I heard about you because you did something at CXL or you did something there, or, hey, I heard in Mercer's community that you were good too. So we went and did that. So it's sort of interesting how, even though we're competitors in some ways, the people who really like this stuff, they want all the knowledge and you can't get it from one place. So It's not really competition. It's a sharing thing. But as far as, when it comes to clients, especially when you're getting started out, I mean, that's the majority of how people get business when they first start out. When they have a service business, 100% of their business comes from referrals. And some months they might get 5 or 10. Some months they might get 0. Multiple months in a row, they might get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And so when they're coming in, you feel great and you're almost like full. You can't have any more. You can't, you're drinking from a fire hose. You're eating all the different awesome things that are there. And then when they leave, it's a feast or famine type thing. And so I think that, looking at referrals, it's almost like the hunter-gatherer phase of humankind, where you would go out there and during the summer you'd pick berries and then you'd eat as many as you can until you were sick from it, or you'd get it, you'd hunt something and then you'd eat that until it was there. Then you might not eat for months after that. And so I think that the challenge with referrals is that it's such a weird source of revenue that usually it's just a phase in a business. And then you start to go on to, how do I get more consistent ways of bringing people in? So you start thinking, okay, well, do I become a farmer? Do I have crops that I can store for the winter? Do I run ads? Do I do these things? So my definition of referral is really having somebody come to you and give you an opportunity that that could lead to new business. And it's pretty inconsistent unless you can work it and make it better. And so I think that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit as we go forward is how can you work it? How can you make this happen more often? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that referrals are similar in the case of like a hunter-gatherer? Does that paradigm work for you, or do you look at it a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because, again, we're guilty of not having the perfect system for this. We've got a lot of great systems, and this is just one we haven't nailed yet. And yet, somebody that's being referred to us has a higher likelihood of closing for sure, a higher average cart value, right? Because they're coming in sort of as a hot lead, hot prospect. They've got a trusted authority already who has prepped them to say this product is good. And we've, I guess, kind of done what you've been doing, which is like we've just been producing a product that's worth referring. And we focus so much on that it's like, well, if the product is worth referring, it'll naturally get referrals, which is true. But at the same time, and this is something where I've talked to our team a lot about this, where I'm like, somebody will, if like somebody says to me, hey, I was doing the monthly option. I was doing a month-to-month option. And I want to go to the annual. And I realized I made the mistake. I did the first month and I realized I definitely want to do a year. Can I credit the first month's payment into the year? So that was something where we realized, hey, the market wants to do this. We don't have a way for them to do this. Why are we making it so much friction that somebody has to email us to ask, can I give you more money? Let's create a system to fix that, right? So the reason I kind of go down that tangent is because for referrals, that's what's happening. People are coming in, being referred to us, but there's it's somebody else that has caused all that stuff to happen. It's not the system causing it, which is a little more random than I would like, kind of to your point, where some months there's nothing, some months there's a ton. But I would like to I think that channel's got a lot of potential to be able to if we had a system to say, hey, once a month we say, hey, how do you like the academy, like for our case, the Measure Marketing Academy? How do you like the Measure Marketing Academy? And have you referred to in the last 30 days, or is anybody that you would know, just to cause that question in their head versus relying on random timing when they happen to be in a mastermind group somewhere and somebody's talking about something and they say, oh, well, we know how to do that because we learned it from this other place. You should go there too. Right. So we don't have a system for that necessarily, other than, the standard sort of like affiliate play or something like that. But even that, we don't, we're not even sending out emails for that. So I think this is one of those things that we're really, really guilty of not taking advantage of, a channel, which is, I think, very, very lucrative, right, for most organizations. But to your point about the hunter farmer thing, it feels like it's a lot more work to do that than it is to spend $100 on Facebook and put ads out. And so and I think maybe that's why we're doing it, is I'm sort of psychoanalyzing my personal process, because things top down, right? It's like you can see something happening when you spend an ad on Facebook. You can't necessarily see the stuff working when you're doing referrals because it's slower. And maybe it's that because it doesn't have the immediate payoff that we haven't done it. But I think in my head, it's a mistake. Like if I'm coaching myself, I'd be like, why don't you have a referral system in place? That seems like an obvious fix. Why would you not do that? So I'm kind of sitting here going, I'm getting caught going, I don't have that. I think I'm really guilty about that. How are you like, do you think about, obviously, like, I think we think about referrals in terms of a lucrative channel in the same way, but are you like, now I'm getting more concerned. I'm like, as soon as I get off this podcast, I'm going to start building a referral platform, right? To get something to at least ask for some stuff. But why? Because you don't have that either. It sounds like why not? Doesn't it make sense? Or am I not thinking about it in the same way in terms of how lucrative it is? Like it's worth it to do that.
Well, it's interesting. You and I have a different, it sounds like a little bit different point of view on that. Referrals are hard. I actually think they're easier, and they're sort of like doing ads is harder to me than getting a referral, right? I just think it's more of a scalability thing with referrals, is that they don't.
And that's what I meant. Yeah, well. to clarify, not so much harder to do, because I think it is more lucrative. It's just that it's easier to see progress. That's what I meant. Okay, like you can turn on a Facebook ad, spend money, go see your Facebook ad, and you go, oh, I'm doing something. Right? You can send an email out to people and say, hey, if you have anybody that knows, and then maybe they do, maybe they don't, because it's a timing issue in a lot of cases with referral, right? Yeah. Whereas the paid media feels like it's a little more, it does this, then it does this, then I can target this audience in an hour and get this to happen, versus, hey, do you know anybody? Well, no, I really don't. And then I can ask you again in a month and you're like, yeah, actually I just met somebody. So it's referrals have that timing component, which for me slows it down. So not so much harder in that way, but slower, right?
Yeah. So let's I agree with you to a certain extent, although I actually think that referrals are faster. It's funny. Like we have I think that referrals are like, and I'm specifically talking about a business that a happy customer gives your name to somebody else and comes in and that person's locked and loaded. They're actually usually a referral is on the awareness spectrum. I'm not sure if you've ever looked at the awareness stages. I'm sure you have, but it's like from unaware to fully aware. A referral is more towards the product fully aware,
Yeah, they're
versus
ready to
being
go.
problem
Yep.
aware. So they're good and they're motivated, in my opinion. Like that. So for example, like there's a difference between though a referral and like an affiliate program. We have an affiliate program for data driven. Some people, like 5 people have driven every single referral in that case we've ever had, right? So I think it's a little bit different for a course business versus on the agency side. Almost all of our business came for the first several $1 million came from referrals, but it's a little bit different definition than what we've had right now for referrals. And so I'm going to give a tactic right now that's really worked for us with referrals and getting new business. And it's one that anybody can do at any time. And this is, you have clients come and go. The average tenure of a CMO is between 12 and 18 months. So you might be working with somebody, they love you, and then they leave to another job or they get let go. There's 2 things you do when somebody leaves your client company. One is when the new person comes in, if you want to do the physical world, which we did a lot, we'd take them to dinner. We'd show them exactly what we're capable of doing, what we've been doing, the results, how we're going to be the ally in their job. And we're going to be the ones who make them look like a star. And we're going to make it so they're not like taking 12 months to know their job. We're going to do it in 3 hours or, 2 weeks. And then the other thing is, when the person goes to the new job, you say, "Hey, how's the new job going? Let us know if you need anything. How's your search campaigns? Do you like the other agency there?" And then you stay in front of them, that when they are in a room like, "Hey, we need to overhaul our search campaigns," they will leave their mark by hiring you because they know that you worked. And so that's my tactic for getting referrals as existing clients, and then the client who's being replaced with somebody else. You immediately mark your turf and you tell them what you're capable of doing, and that it works amazingly. So that's sort of one way that you can get referrals to come in. But on the timing issue that you talked about, is like, does that happen in, does that person, are they looking for a new search marketing agency the first week that they go to a company, or is it usually within a few months? For us, it's usually within 3 to 6 months that they would then bring you in to pitch that new business. And then you still have to win everybody over. But again, for the person who brought you in, you are at 100% aware. They know exactly what you can do. And so that's sort of where I look at referrals being the best, is when it's somebody who's fully aware of your capabilities.
That makes sense. I think in my head, and it goes back to that referrals definition a little bit. I think in my head, I also have the referrals that come in from kind of like the super connectors, because I am definitely more on the introverted scale, right? Like I can play an extrovert on the internet, which I do all the time, right? You and I both kind of do this, and we can go out there and do that. But honestly, I am constantly spending energy. I am discharging, right? When I do that, I have to then be by myself at the hotel room for like a day to recover, right? And that's where that's kind of the introverts. We charge by being by ourselves. So I'm not out there all the time meeting and greeting and talking to people, creating business, but I will network with kind of the traditional sort of super connectors, the people that run the mastermind groups, or I'll do, work with sort of the higher players in the industry, and they naturally tell people about it. So I end up getting referrals through that. But do you think, because they're not direct customers, those people, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but does that still qualify as referral in what we're talking about here for you? Like, in other words, a super connector that just happens to know us, knows of us, has referred other people to us that have been happy, and they can refer business as well.
Yeah, it's funny. In our last episode, we started with the definition. I think this one, we probably could have both started with the definition to get on the same page as far as what a referral is, because I go in my head, I'm like, what is a referral? I don't know if I even, like, is a referral that, like, is that a referral? Like you're in Austin, you went to, like, there's all these internet marketers in Austin. You went there, you're like, "Hey, I'm the analytics guy." And then suddenly, like, "Hey, if you need an analytics guy, I met this guy Mercer, a good guy. I know him." That's how Pep introduced us. Like, from that.
Exactly right. From
That's
CXL,
exactly how we
Pep
know
from
each other,
CXL,
right?
yep,
And I was like, he's competition. I don't know if I should talk to this guy, but he made the intro, and I like you. We're doing a podcast together, and that's
exactly.
like, okay, what was the referral there? It's like, okay, well, I think that is a referral. Like, you are creating your own luck. So I actually, like, if I were to define this, and I could be wrong, I'm definitely different going into this than you were, is like, I think a referral is creating your own luck. It is excel. And when I wrote that, I sort of, so just some inside baseball here, I wrote down, how do you get more referrals for your business, as an idea. And I had one thing in my head, and I think that maybe it wasn't so much like, how do you send out a card that says, like in an Amazon box that says, tell your friend and get $5. It was more like, how do you create your own luck? That's sort of how I looked at this. Like, okay, well, you created your own luck by going to the networking event and connecting with connectors. I've created my own luck by doing very similar things. A lot of the times, a few conversations end up leading to a lot for me. And it's like, you could call it inbound marketing. You could call it anything. But I think that the principles are pretty similar. And that is that you accelerate these conversations in a way that wouldn't have happened if you'd just sat at home and done nothing. So that's sort of my definition of a referral, is like, how do you get inbound business from your activities, and how do you do more of that versus just like feeling sorry for yourself because business isn't coming in?
Yeah, I like that. And I wrote that down too. Like, how do you create your own luck? And the other thing that I would add, I guess, as a caveat to that for me specifically for referral, because in my head, I'm thinking like, well, we do stages. We talk on stages all the time, right? We're doing podcasts all the time. And we will get referrals from the podcast host. That's been a surprising thing for us. Like, it's a known urban agency that we're on a podcast with. We teach them a few things about how to look at the world. And they're like, oh, that's amazing. I never thought about it like that. And then all of a sudden they're referring their clients over to us, right? So we'll have that. It's kind of that creating your own luck. But I think it's creating your own luck specifically for us as it relates to referrals would be getting other people to talk about you in a positive way, obviously, right? So it's when I'm on stages, I can educate the audience and they are talking amongst themselves, and they can go back to their companies and talk about us. And then they are saying, we have to go to these people. We have to go meet with them. Let's jump on a discovery call or whatever. But they are bringing in that lead at that point because they were talking about us, warming up whoever the person was, bringing them in, as opposed to a Facebook ad doing it or a webinar doing it that we used. So I think speaking in our case, the stages could work for that. I think the podcast can work for that. So in a way, maybe we've got a system somewhat on that warming up referrals, let's call it that, because we are creating conversations, right? That's the whole point, is to create a conversation to happen between two other people where you're not in the room, but one of them is educating the other one to your benefit. And ideally, they are doing the call to action for them to say, yeah, you need to go talk to them. Like they're asking for that sale, right?
Yeah, it's funny. So I think you're one of the best in the business at that. So I'll toot your horn a little bit here. And that is, nobody ever mentions any other education system on my education programs, but they all say Mercer, man, Mercer. So you have that level of referral where people are talking about you, not just one-on-one, but they're talking about you in other communities. And I think that's a great testament as to the type of relationships you create. So while you don't have a referral card, that's an archaic concept anyway. A referral card, hey, go do this thing. People have so many options now that it's really hard to get anybody to do anything. So the fact that they're thinking about you outside of when you're in front of them is it's great. It's a testament. And that's sort of like, I think, the modern version of that. Now, could you send an email to everybody who's on measurement marketing and tell them, hey, get $100 if you refer a friend? You could, and it might work. But I would actually say that you might be better off just letting that conversation happen out there, because otherwise you're doing a tactic and you're sort of cheapening the value of the community to a certain extent by doing that. And that's why I haven't done it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think to that point, maybe that's why I haven't, because it does feel a little like I'm pandering, I guess. And maybe that's what keeps people from doing that. That's an interesting way to think about it. But I want to just to challenge the thought, because sometimes it's like, oh, that's the easy answer. Yeah, I'm going to go that way. Do you think it would be pandering to do that, to say, hey, you've been in part of the academy for 90 days. A lot of times people ask us if we have an affiliate program, which is true. They will email us and do that. And my thinking is, well, if one person took the time, effort, and energy to email me to ask me about this, there were 10 other people behind them that just didn't have the energy to ask, but they're interested. So do I send out that email and say, hey, just so we do have this option if you wanted it? Or do we say, nah, we're just going to be good enough, like we are, like show the results and then create the conversations the way we have been?
Yeah. So it's actually, this relates back to your meeting with connectors and having them connect. Affiliate marketing and everything like that isn't just, it's not an 80-20. It's more like a 99-1. 99% of the things come from a handful of people. And so you're better off actually not cheapening it with everybody else and saying, hey, do you want to become an affiliate? Because most people have like one or two people they can talk to, and really just doing a targeted outreach to try to find that one influencer who can push you. I can't tell you how many times people have said, hey, do you have an affiliate program? We'll create something for them. And then I look at their link and they've never
And it's
had a single
crickets.
sale.
Yeah.
Now I did one very recently where somebody's like, hey, I have a network of 500 people who need this thing. We're going to reimburse them to take your class. I was like, I instantly created a landing page with them on there, and it's been great. It's in multiple thousands of dollars. So I think that most people are worth. Most referrals are either you just let it be fortuitous and unmeasurable, and then you spend your effort and your capital and your brain power building out a landing page, creating a coupon, all that stuff for the ones who have the network with them, for the connectors.
That makes sense. And how do you get how are you measuring that? Because you mentioned sort of the measuring thing, which sort of got me thinking about it. How are you measuring that referrals are working or not? Is it just if they happen to, like when you're asking them on a discovery call or something for like the higher level work, it might be like, how'd you hear about us? And they're like, oh, such and such told me to reach out. And you're like, cool, that's a referral. But how do you do it digitally if you're not using any sort of affiliate? Like, do you have a form where it's like, how did you hear about us? And or trying to see, are people talking? Like, how do you measure the buzz, I guess, is the question.
There's the qualitative and quantitative. The quantitative is, I just call it organic sales. And it's pretty consistent on average over the years of just sales where we can attribute it. So it's not from an email campaign. It's for products that we're not necessarily promoting right now. It's a certain amount of money, and we just sort of look at that as just the business value. Like if I just shut everything down and didn't send another email, we'd still get that number every month at least. So it's like the non-marketing, I call it organic percentage, and that includes referrals. That includes some organic search type stuff, but it's mostly the word of mouth. And so that's it's a maybe 10% of the business every month is that, which is not bad, 10 to 20%. Now that's the quantitative is actually not really quantitative. It's just sort of like the everything else bucket. That's where I put it in right now. And the qualitative is when people say it. Like when people say, hey, I heard about you from this thing. We have a rule where if you hear of something from somebody, if they give you feedback, multiply it by between 10 and 100. And that's how many people actually feel that way. So if two people come in and say, hey, I heard you about you on the e-commerce fuel forum or on measurement marketing or from your CXL course, I assume there's somewhere between 20 and 200 people who saw that. And I'm just getting the percentage that takes action.
I love that idea. That's kind of what we talk about. Look at, if there's one person there, there's like 10 or 20 behind them, but to your point, there's probably a lot more that are back there. That's pretty interesting. That's the other thing I think that we've done on the referral. Cause now I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to talk myself off the ledge. Cause the beginning of this podcast, I was like, all right, we have no systems. Jeff's going to have amazing systems. I'm going to take a ton of notes and we're going to go enact all those systems. And now I'm starting to go like, well, maybe we do have systems and I just didn't give myself credit. So to your point around what we call tribal marketing, which is like, the CXL course is a perfect example. When they asked us to do that, we're like, yes. But there was two reasons. One is obviously we like Pep and Pep and I have known each other for a long time at CXL. So wanted to help him out. And it was a defensive play, right? Where it was like, well, if I don't do it, somebody else will. And then that's going to be brand marketing, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then I start doing it. So when other people are like, hey, can you give us like an hour of your time to jump on a webinar to help out? We're going to have 100 people call. I'm like, yes. And I say yes to that stuff all the time. And it's not that hard because it's the same presentation. You already got the slides done. We talk about this stuff every day, every minute of every day practically. So it's just like breathing for me, and I like teaching, so it energizes me. So I'll go out and do that. But those are all these little defensive postures that are out there doing that, and that's what's maybe warming them up, creating that buzz that you were talking about. Because I'm thinking like, how did that happen? That's probably how it happened. Is just doing a podcast at a time, a tribal little marketing webinar at a time, and building it up that way.
Yeah, I'm 100%, man. I'm doing one right now that I reluctantly went into, but the audience is huge. The profile is big. It positions me in a way. And then also if I didn't do it, they'd probably reach out to you. They'd probably reach out to some of our friends. They are all friends. I have good vibes with everybody in the industry.
Yeah, we are all about co-opetition here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, there's enough to go around, and we all can only teach so much. So yeah, I definitely I do a lot of defensive things as well. You're right. But I'm definitely a manufacture your own luck person, and I had to be because like when we both started internet marketing, there was no jobs, there was no training. There was nothing out there, and so we sort of had to scrap and forage, twigs and berries and
true.
hunter gatherers. And so that there's a lot of that in our DNA and my DNA for sure. And so I just got better at it, and the scale got bigger, right? The scale of how many times I can do this got bigger. But yeah, every opportunity it's really just leading to the next opportunity. It's not so much that I can say that one thing was great. Some of these things, like I'll project, like if this thing works, I'm going to be in a new tax bracket, and it doesn't work at all. Some things I have low expectations for, and then they end up taking off, and that's good. But it's more the number of hands you play versus the number of hours you're in the game. There's a saying in investing, that's the amount of time. It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. And I believe referrals is the same way. How much time can you be in that market to get it?
I love that. I love that. And it's and you're right, because I think that is the problem with referrals overall, because it's to your point about earlier in the conversation, it's got a squishiness factor to it. Like, it's not like, oh, this is what a referral is. Everyone's going to think the same thing. It's not like paid traffic. Paid traffic, you can say, well, here's what my CPMs were, here's what my reach was, here's what my impressions were, right? Even if you're doing broadcasts like radio or billboard, they're still going to have reach and impression numbers, right? There's some sort of metric there, but referrals kind of like this weird squishy thing. And how do you move that thing forward? And I think, to your point, there isn't I'm going to do this, which will cause this. It's, I'm going to try this, which today might cause this and tomorrow might not work at all. And then I'm going to do something. And so that, because it is so unpredictable how it's going to work, the answer is, on how to get more referrals, would be do a lot of different things to get people talking. So I wouldn't just rely on podcasts. I would also go on stages. I wouldn't just rely on podcasts and stages. I would go and create courses for other people or have webinars with other, groups. I wouldn't just do all of those. I'm also going to hang out on the masterminds with the super connectors and make sure that they understand. And I'm going to do my best to help them and clients that they are bringing in. And all of those together, sometimes in a month, do nothing. And sometimes in a month, do everything. And most of the time, it's somewhere in between. But to your point, it's because I'm everywhere that I can be, that I'm trying to be, some defensive plays, some not, that's causing the conversations. And so, is that, when you're thinking about, if we kind of summarize this in the 5 or 6 minutes remaining here, if you had to summarize, like, somebody's coming to you and saying, listen, I need to get more referrals, they're not coming in. My initial response would be like, well, why aren't you naturally getting them? Because that might be an issue, right? There's a quality issue going on. But let's assume that there isn't that. And just, for whatever reason, people aren't talking about them. What would you sort of give as a summary to getting more referrals?
Yeah, I think put yourself out there, but do it with an 80-20. So you can put yourself out there, but just, you have to, the longer you're in the game, the more you realize some efforts are better than others. So an example would be, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to be an affiliate, I just respond to them now and say, hey, how many people do you think that you would get in front of? Do you think you get 10, or do you think you get 200? And then if they say 10, I'd be like, you know what? Actually, we don't have an affiliate program. Or I might, maybe not that rude, but here's the link, but I don't have expectations. I wouldn't do a call. If somebody says, hey, can we do a 30-minute call? I need to understand what I'm going to get out of it. Or I just, it's funny, like, people are like, hey, can I talk to you about this at Data Driven? I was like, actually, you can send an email to here, and we'll send you our sponsorship information. And people are like, okay, cool. And then they're sponsoring our newsletter now, versus me getting on a 30-minute call, right? So that's not an example of a referral, but that's just how I value my time more as we get into this thing further. And so I think that's it. It's valuing yourself and your time, and just trying to evaluate opportunities as to what is the scenario. So even though I'm a data guy, I'm a story guy just as much. And I'm like, what's the story behind this thing? How will this shake out? And you do enough scenarios, and you can be like, okay, this, if I talk to this person, it could lead to something, so I'm going to do it. If I talk to this person, it's probably not going to, or there's a lower percentage chance that I'm not going to focus on that. So I 80-20 every opportunity that comes in. And then I 80-20 my efforts on the outbound as well. How about you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking about because I can sort of hear somebody listening to this podcast going, well, you guys have been around for a long time. Like, referrals are going to be easier for you because you have all this stuff out there. Of course they're easy, right? But I'm going back to when I first started, when it was just me, and I was just nobody, right? On the internet. Nobody heard about me. It was that's how it is, right? So it was that expectation of, and I didn't 80-20 it as much in the beginning, probably just because honestly, I had the time. Let's face it, when you're first starting out, right? You're trying to generate business, you got plenty of time. So I served wherever I possibly could, and I would help people out with whatever I could. So at the time, it was like jumping into a Facebook group, helping people do stuff, sending some videos of how to unlock some things. And then that would lead to somebody DMing me like, hey, could you jump on a call and walk me through? And then that would lead to, hey, you helped my buddy out. Could they, do you mind if, we talk? And that's sort of how it went. So that was the match, I think, that lit that network, because I did not build off paid traffic. I did not build off an email. I didn't have an email list. Like, I didn't have any of those assets. All I had was that ability to disseminate the knowledge and to help people out with what I knew. And I would do that as freely as I could with the time that I had in order to kind of get that flywheel going. And I think, to your point, now, yeah, of course I can't do that. I'm not on any of the social media platforms. Maybe YouTube, but that's about it. And so I have to pull back because I just don't have the time to do it. Yeah. But I'm trying to get the company to do it. So I'm having like my department heads now do it. Like, we've got, literally, as we're recording this, one of my department heads is on stage speaking right now, and which is awesome, because now it's like, oh, they're doing it now, and they're creating that so that we can have it within the DNA of referrals in our company. But just, again, to emphasize a point for somebody just starting out, I think it's just that serve, like, do your best to help other people out with your knowledge and get them great results, even if it's for free in the beginning, and then that naturally sort of produces that. So that's sort of how I think, wrapping it up.
Yeah, I'll just do one quick note on that. Is I agree. I always say you can't 80-20 things unless you have 100 results or X results. Like, you don't know what the 80-20 is yet. You need that experience. Right. And so if you're just getting started out, experience is good. And you just demonstrated something that I did exactly the same way, and that is to be helpful. You can always be helpful. Being helpful is free. Being helpful is amazing, right? And you'll go far in life. You'll have a good living if you always say, how can I be helpful to others? You might not scale, but all that you and I did to start out was to be helpful. And we just happened to hit the wave at the right time. We made some good decisions. We made some good hires. And now we're still trying to be helpful, but we're trying to do it with more resources.
Helpful at scale.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. No, I love it. Well, thank you for that. So there we go. So now we've talked about referrals, kind of definition of how to actually go through and get some referrals, and some strategies on how to think about not only what a referral is, but maybe even expanding out the definition. I know that happened for me. Like, I would not have put in podcasts and stages and the super connector networks and all that stuff that I have done naturally with that. So ideally, you've got at least one or two nuggets out of this podcast. Jeff and I thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Business Unfiltered.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Business Unfiltered with your hosts, Mercer and Jeff Sauer. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and tell a friend what you've learned today. Want to connect? Visit us at businessunfiltered.fm. This has been Business Unfiltered, always unapologetically honest.